Welcome to Check Point ReelTalk, a podcast for security folks who want less FUD and more FUN. In each episode, we'll have lighthearted conversations about security, people, processes, and technology as we react to how they're portrayed in film and TV. We'll bring in experts from inside and outside Check Point to break it down. What was accurate? What wasn't? And what can you apply to real-world cyber events? On this episode of Check Point ReelTalk, we're joined by host Syya Yasortornrat, product marketing manager Diana Polansky, and global head of application security executive Correia, with a deeper look into the IT crowd, Series 3, Episode 4, The Speech.
What is it?
This, Jen, is the internet.
What?
That's right.
This is the internet. The whole internet.
Yep. I asked for a loan of it so that you could use it in your speech.
It's so small.
That's one of the surprising things about it.
Hang on. It doesn't have any wires or anything.
It's wireless.
Oh, yes, everything's wireless nowadays, isn't it? So I can really use it in my speech. What if someone needs it?
Oh, no. People will still be able to go online and everything. It'll still work.
Oh, good.
I tell you, you present this to the shareholders and you will get quite a response.
Can I touch it? Ooh. It's so light.
Of course it is, Jen. The internet doesn't weigh anything.
No, of course it doesn't.
Hey! What is Jen doing with the internet?
Ma said I could use it for my speech.
Are you insane? What if she drops it?
I won't drop it. I'll look after it.
No, Jen. No, this needs to go straight back to Big Ben.
Big Ben?
Yeah, it goes on top of Big Ben. That's where you get the best reception.
All right, I promise I won't let anything happen to it.
No, Jen, I'm sorry, but the elders of the internet would never stand for it.
No, Roy,
Okay, guys, wireless and Big Ben. Can we talk about this a little bit? Because I think that's actually a really important part that I don't think people realize how wireless works. Like, Diana, Les, what are you guys seeing on that?
I think those are two different parts. Like, can we talk about the wireless and the Big Ben separately?
Yes. Okay. So here's the deal.
Actually, I wouldn't even go there. What I would say is the internet, and then we can digress into what, because the term wireless is like there's wired, there's wireless too. There has to be there could be some form of wired too.
Right.
What do you mean?
Things are connected. Like, for example, you've got connectivity at home, right? At somewhere, like whoever provides your connectivity at home connects a wire to the house or the apartment or whatever. And then you can have a concept of everything wireless, but it's not true. Just everything's wireless. It just doesn't work that way. It could be through, maybe you can do it through satellites and all that.
Oh, okay. You're saying that she completely misunderstands the concept of wireless, and they're kind of playing a joke on her here, and she's trying to pretend that she understands what's going on, but she still doesn't get it.
Yeah, and I think that term we could probably use that thing about not knowing enough and awareness right at the end of that, after that speech, if only because it's knowledge in the end, right, and awareness. And all of us are very different human beings, regardless of what we do in life. We are exposed to certain things, and therefore, that you have that experience. Each of us have our own experiences in our world. It doesn't mean that everyone knows everything, that unless God gives it. But the concept of not knowing is very different, because what you do, for example, or what Syya does, right? She does things like all this audio visuals and all that stuff. There's no way in hell I know enough about it. I even asked the concept of both of you using green and talking. It's those things, right? At the same time, there are some areas that I might be further exposed to. And then there's the whole other thing about behaviors and, condescending and, that stuff. It's, the empathy part of life that, eventually it comes back, right? It's knowing things is one thing. Conveying it is another thing. And, having a message that goes across is important because you might have all the knowledge in the world and not know how to communicate.
Oh, you're right. I can empathize with that. I remember last year when I was working with some developers, they were going on and on about doing something in a repository, and I didn't know what that word was. And they thought that they acted like I was dumb, but I wasn't. I just had never heard it before and didn't know what it was used for.
Yeah. And actually, you're bringing up a point, right? The concept, and I'm sure, again, it's the first time I'm sort of seeing these episodes, for example. But, it comes back to knowledge. You have knowledge, and then you want to convey that. You want to raise awareness by conveying that knowledge. If you don't convey it well, it can be misunderstood, or you might understand it differently, for example, and explain it in a different way. I feel strongly about a lot of things because even the concept of internet and, I just think internet is something, it's a concept of connectivity. All of us are connected.
Right.
And we start using things for what they are, and we make assumptions there. Because initially it was only meant to be certain, you always build products or you build services for specific functionality or that's at least what's the intent, regardless of how much money comes or whatever. But then it can be used in a very different way. People can exploit that in a very different way. Say, oh, we've got this connectivity, so now what can we do? And
Right. I bet wasn't it developed by the military?
Yeah, but
is that right?
Yeah, but it's nothing to I would go even beyond that, right? It was meant to connect, right? And then when you start connecting, nobody actually thought, hey, you know what, you need to secure things and all that stuff. But then you started having, and I'm going even further back than this movie, this episode, if you will, where you have ATMs. People were reluctant to use because, hey, you know what, you're putting your card in, it's going to do something, and well, what if I go in the middle, in between there, and try to tap out all that information, right? And it was never thought to be that way. You always make assumptions people will use it the way you build it for, and actually you might not. And
it reminds me of a meme I saw of children on a playground, and it was talking about UX, but it's kind of a similar concept. So you see all these slides, but the children are actually sliding down the hill beside the slide.
Yeah, and you see, so that tells you about perceptions, your environments, and all that stuff. Because what is us here, probably like in my case, I'm here in the U.S., right, and our exposures here versus other cultural exposures and how they see things. Even now that you mentioned UX, right, things mean different things in colors and all that to different cultures as well, right? So it's those things I see. So for me, like the internet is just like any other technology. And that goes to what you were talking about earlier about Diana and Syya, about your own products, for example, right? You build it for certain things, but it's going to be used something else. And I'll say that because we go to artificial intelligence. It's not a new concept. You want machines to do this repetitive work or stuff that, so that you can focus on the important stuff. But that whole concept, it can be meant for good, but you can also use it in another way and say, hey, now that I'm getting that information, how can I use that information for bad or whatever we consider the word bad to be, right?
Yeah, right. It's interesting. Like you're talking about the internet that was supposed to improve communication, or maybe I don't really remember how it was developed, but apparently it was supposed to improve communication, but also keep that communication private. And then it sort of became kind of, people realized that they could tap into that and like do really malicious things, as well as also use it for entertainment and even porn. Like it's like the military, whoever created it is probably just like rolling in his grave right now. Like, what did I do?
I do think, though, do you guys feel like there is still, from a population of on Earth perspective, better education around what the internet is, or are we still in that, ignorance is bliss phase?
It's actually more than internet. That's what I think of it, right? At least speaking for myself. It's technology. There's no, I really, if you start talking about technology in terms of silos, like, security, risk, and all the other stuff, we miss the bigger picture that in general, society will evolve and have. So in other words, say Diana or Lucia, right? For example, it's not important that, hey, someone's a security person and another person's an IT person, another person's just a lay person. Eventually, all of us have to be aware of what can or cannot be done. And sometimes if you might be aware of certain things and I might be, for example, an IT person, for example, and might not be aware of that area that you've been exposed to. And what I think that those lines have blurred, and eventually I think I see these both IT, security, and all of that being, under one kind of umbrella. We've broken it down, but really it's one kind of thing.
I feel like that's why that, a lot of times now you kind of expect people to know technology and know the possible problems that can happen with the technology they use every day. Like you and we go through all these security trainings as soon as we start a new job, and they like take over our phone and they put all these controls on it because they know that we're going to hook up to the work computer and work information might go to our phone. But not everybody knows that's an issue. If you don't work for a cybersecurity company, they don't know that just connecting all of your devices just opens you up to all kinds of problems. So then you get mass hysteria on the internet saying, oh, this place was hacked, this person got phished because they thought it was their grandmother, but it was not their grandmother. That happens to me all the time. Every old woman I know has gotten phished, and I've gotten these weird Facebook requests that are saying things to me that sound weird that I wouldn't think that an old lady would send me. So because I think that they get targeted because people assume that a young person probably understands technology enough to know when their Facebook is hacked, but an old lady won't know.
And I wouldn't actually even categorize it that, but that's an opinion I'm sharing. Because I say, it all depends on your exposure, because once, we learn the most when we make mistakes. So the people who've been hit earlier will be now much more aware of they should or should not do. That gets into an aspect of behaviors and social engineering itself. It's the human mind. It's nothing to do with technology. It's just convincing you in such a way and going into behavior psychologically to make you think one way or the other.
So it might be that the older people that this happens to them because they're just not aware. They didn't grow up with this, and it's not even so much that they're less aware of how the technology works. Is they're less aware that someone would do that to them
or exposed, because as humans, right? I think in general, you have trust, and if somebody talks to you in a nice way and all that, you just feel better, right? It's working on all those psychological things, right? And that's how this whole concept of social engineering and all that stuff. And now when you mix it up with knowledge, for example, right? And again, I'm digressing probably, but when we say artificial intelligence, but I want to sort this concept because it sounds big, but it's not big really. It is collecting of data, the algorithms are like very few anyway. They have certain methods of doing things, but it's a combination of getting all that data you can possibly get on, say, perhaps Diana or Shia, for example, correlating that and curating it, the important stuff, right? It used to be just classifying it, but now it's gone even further of getting the most important stuff and combining that with senses and so on and so forth. I can convince your friend, your family that, hey, this is Diana. No, I'm saying I can. I'm saying in general. You can use technology to convince, almost like a human, because I know so much about one of you, for example, that you would likely think, oh, this is that person. But to explain about how it is believable, right? I would say that you're saying nothing happened. You don't know that nothing happened because of the techniques that are used to attack. For example, breaches. And I'm saying this because we talk about all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're discovered sometimes 200, nearly a year after. What is the techniques that you hang in there, be dormant, and eventually you come back and and try it, because otherwise, if you start, as soon as they discover something about your friend, for example, Diana, I could go into and then you go, hey, this looks fishy. That, well, what are you doing? I'd wait and just listen. Gather more information and all that stuff, and then send in another queue. And eventually, when I got enough, then I'll just go and attack. And that's the way most breaches also happen. Even the things that we hear about in the news, it's only it's like an iceberg, right?
Right.
You only hear the top thing. You don't know what's underneath, where 90% of that stuff is already exposed. Companies are paying out and all that stuff, even though, say, the policy isn't, for example. So that's why it's risk averse. Being risk averse is one thing, and the other thing is the reputation is a big thing, right? If you say, oh, if you talk company wise, they try to block in general. So
that makes absolute sense.
Of course it is, Jen. The internet doesn't weigh anything.
No, of course it doesn't.
Hey! What is Jen doing with the internet?
Ma said I could use it for my speech.
Are you insane? What if she drops it?
I won't drop it. I'll look after it.
No, Jen. No, this needs to go straight back to Big Ben.
Big Ben?
Yeah, it goes on top of Big Ben. That's where you get the best reception.
Right, I promise I won't let anything happen to it.
No, Jen, I'm sorry, but the elders of the internet would never stand for it.
No, Roy, I spoke to the elders of the internet not 1
Elders
hour
of the
ago.
internet.
I told them about Jen winning Employee of the Month, and they were so impressed that they wanted to do whatever they could to help.
Wait a minute. The elders of the internet. The elders of the internet know who I am. You've got to let me have it.
No, Jen, I'm sorry. It's just too risky.
Oh, please, Roy.
You want to talk about the elders of the internet?
I think we need to do the elders of the internet. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys, if we were to look at elders of the internet, what would they be like in real life?
No, I have a different concept. The way I'm looking at this, they're probably, they're trying to, convince her and, by name dropping, so that, everyone wants to be associated with the big names, for example, right? And so that concept of, elders and somebody is important, if you will, and associated with this technology that you're trying to do. And that's our society itself, right? Oh, I know so-and-so, and so, in life. And I think they're trying to play on her mind and, hey, so-and-so does it. Oh, and even if it could be real, but who cares? It's name dropping to convince her that it's, some important folks are involved here. And, so it means a lot. So that it's a psychological thing, on convincing her psychologically.
Oh, that absolutely is going on. But it also reminds me of what you were saying. But when we spoke earlier about this concept of governments and someone governing the internet.
Yeah, and
I
that's
mean-
true. Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is, but the concept of even governance and government and all that, right? That's usually their regulations after the fact. Also, I have that opinion too, right? When new technology comes up, until you realize that there's something that's going to be potentially something. Oh, let's put regulations in place, and so on, and cover. If you look at it from that perspective, but who is this? Governance area. It depends on which area you are in. Like, for example, is it across nations? Each place has its own rules and what they can. You can use it for. You have some states that, in fact, maybe all states do it in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Like I start thinking about the difference between, say, GDPR and CCPA,
Yeah.
like what privacy laws that you have in California, they're directly related to what's going on in Europe. And now every single time I go on a website, I have all these annoying pop-ups and checkboxes I have to do. And I know I'm part of the problem because I create these websites and I have to do it.
Yeah, but there's also the other thing, right? It's beyond that. It could be governments monitoring you for everything.
Oh,
Right?
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, but that's being done, right? Today, we say, when we talk about all this privacy stuff, that is for at least legally and making that assumption that everyone will follow those rules, right?
Right.
But in reality, if you didn't want to follow any rules, you could get that information anyway.
Right.
Like we spoke
Right,
about,
and I guess I'm
could
thinking
get-
about it. I'm thinking about it a little bit at face value. Like I have to put this on these websites and deal with it on websites, and I'm not even thinking about that my credit cards might be on the websites. And then if mine are, and I don't even, and it's not that big of a deal. It's easy for me to block my credit cards or whatever. But what if I used a work computer and went onto internet and all the work data, that would be a big deal.
Yeah, but let's see, at least you might have better controls there because the workplaces tend to have better controls for the work they do. But that doesn't mean that information is not available.
No. Yeah, I agree.
And that's why the concept of privacy, as we understand it from the word privacy, it depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it purely from regulation perspective and you're breaking it and therefore it costs money and all that stuff, that's one thing. But if you look at it from another perspective, hey, if I need to know something about a person, I just have to look at all these other data sources or use the same artificial intelligence toolings and all that's available of data sources and get that information regardless, and you'll get it. But what I'm relating to you is the concept of privacy is a big word that means different things depending on the context. I hope I'm clear.
Oh, absolutely. Like you're not talking about just personal identifying information and web traffic. You're talking about real surveillance, like every single thing someone does.
And the fact, you've crossed the road. There are cameras. You get everything. You've got your watches and your stuff. You can be tracked, and that tracking happens unbelievable. I can tell you this. Like for example, you might have something like a Fitbit or something or Garmin or whatever thing that you have. That's tracking you. That's how it knows how many steps you've done. So think about it this way. Diana, let's say you are in a place. Let's go. Any place, let's say I don't want to name countries, then it becomes another whole thing. But like you're in a place, I can track you. Where have you been? And there are tools available for free to track that this person.
So do you think it's unsafe to wear a Fitbit?
No, I'm just saying. I can say, look, we can go at face value and say that. I'm just saying that concept of being private or it's a myth.
It is.
So because once you put things out, you can't take it out. Regardless.
Oh, right. So no matter what controls we put over, you're only allowing people still only a little bit of privacy.
Yeah, but remember, because I can take you, like today, what a deep fake and all that stuff that's happening, right? I can take your face and put it on someone else and say, hey, and it looks so real.
Right.
Put me on Syya.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just giving you these as examples of things. I know we digressed here, but the concept of that governance is good. It's good because you need to have guidelines and controls and someone to oversee.
Yep.
But many a time they are more reactionary because they say, oh, this was built for that. And now it's being used this way. So let's put regulation. Now, at least our citizens or if they break this or somebody working with us, they have to follow those standards. And therefore, we will either find them. But again, even that is become in the legal perspective, it's become another headache because usually, depending on who that person is, like, the attorney general or whoever that is, right, might make an example of some company. So and the same thing being done by someone else might not, because only this company is bigger or is known much further. You zap them, and then that person who put them. I use the word attorney general. It could be someone else. Can get elected because they want to make a name for themselves. So this whole,
right.
I'm just saying this.
Like in what case would they be, in what sort of situation would they be trying to, like, basically, I don't know, tar and feather someone?
I don't understand that last.
Oh, okay. I'm saying in what, if they want to use someone as a negative example, don't do this. What would a scenario like that be?
No, it's like say you've broken the law. You won't mention privacy, right? Whether it's GDPR or something, or CCPA, or this is here in California, here in the US, privacy things, right? You can get people being fined big time, but it's usually. There are many who've done it, but the one or two, maybe the first ones would be the big example. Just like in anything, you get arrested and you want to make a case that no one else should do something, and therefore that the first few people become the example. And if you're a bigger person, it's more named for the person who's arresting you, and therefore their image gets elevated as well. The person who's arresting you, so now when somebody says, oh, so and so arrested this thing, oh, they know him or her, whoever that person is. They know that person already, and therefore their name exposure goes up. It's like I said, name dropping and the psychology of how things work.
Which I think is perfect. I think it's perfect that you tie that back to, again, Jen saying, oh my God, elders of the internet know who I am. Man alive. Everything you guys just kind of like went through, just like in my head, was a couple things here is humans don't like to follow rules, because I have a perspective that we are inherently lazy because we want to do the open shortest path first and get to whatever thing that we're going towards. And so if we don't have governance of some capacity, it's just anarchy at that point, because if there's a will, there's always a way to do it. Someone's going to want to do it differently. You remind me of, if you've been to Asia during traffic rush hour, sometimes those lines on that street are just like recommendations. And there's others that just start like driving down the sidewalk because they need to get somewhere. So, I feel like that's like visually, that's how I view the internet and just how we view access to data. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it is. And they're like humans. It's not just that they don't like to follow rules. They're careless. And most like hacks, like 90% of them or less, can probably correct me, are due to human error.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The human, I don't care. I actually just said this in an earlier conversation. Technology is, I think, in a way to be a tool of convenience for us as humans. Like we were talking about AI, right? Everyone's so fearful of AI. There's pros and cons to it, but at its root, at its core is automation. It is to take away the mundane repetitive tasks, automate that. So like you say, Les, we can do more creative things. We can do and use our minds, and get deeper into whatever task that needs to, whatever problem we're solving. But I do think we run the risk as humans. We're fallible. Technology is getting to that point where it doesn't matter how many security borders that you put up. Us humans, if we see an email from, someone we know and trust that might have gotten hacked, we're going to click on it.
But that has never ever changed, right? If that's the way I see it. Whether we use other technology and more technology and so on and so forth, it's just that it's shifting. And I think people will evolve, and the basic stuff will be eventually already almost everyone and their cousin will know it, and things like today we use an ATM, we use this, it's just become natural. We use a credit card instead of cash, and it's this basics. It never used to be that, not so long ago, and it becomes a natural thing. But yeah, I think that the people part of it is the most difficult part, right?
Yeah, right. The more technology you have, some people are afraid that it takes away jobs, but it actually creates jobs. You need people to monitor this stuff.
Oh, now, yes, actually, you're right on key there, as well as you create other types of jobs, right? Because now this kind of, even if you say, oh, it's going to take away a job, then that repetitive, mundane stuff, now you can focus on things that make you more happy as against repeating the same thing again and again.
Oh my gosh, I think we can keep waxing poetic on this, guys. I think it's, just us being in this industry, right? We see so much of just humanity, all our foibles, right? And we're always having to second guess, right? Because where people can make money, there's going to be malicious intent, right? Because greed is a huge driver, right? And whatever motivates greed, that's a different issue, and that's not our topic.
Right? It's not just greed though, because when you think about all the different ways that people can get hacked, and the people and companies, the motivation, it can be like nation states, like big governments going after it. People can hack a company because they're bored and they're smart. Like less, like what is there, like 5 or 6, 10, maybe even 10 different reasons why people hack?
I don't want to say why people hack. But hacking is just hacking. You can hack making food as well. But point is, I think what's important is, you're right. It's not just money, right? I think, at least, it is. It could be power.
Yeah.
That you want power, and you want just to upend something else.
I mean, look,
take it to a whole nother level, and I don't want to get into that whole political thing, but yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, hey man, like the big scary is nation state. That's the bigger one, right? Like, look, as long as you have an IP address, you are exposed and you have a potential of getting hacked in whatever. Like my toaster now has an IP address, right? But there's that kind of malicious activity, and then there's the truly, what I'm very afraid of is the nation state activities, which I think we could go on another topic at another time.
Actually, but I think all of them are equally bad, right? Because look, hey, just because you chose it based on that or something else, I can find out more information about your house. But to me, to get to your place is just good enough, and I'll just get whatever I can. And humans generally, I'm not saying everyone does it that way, but I'm more concerned about the surrounding area. It's not like, hey, this place is fighting against. Yes, people do think about it, but they're more concerned about their own areas and space. It doesn't affect you as much until you're affected yourself, or somebody really close to you is affected, and that's when you realize, hey, this is serious.
Yeah,
I'm talking from a psychological thing. I'm not saying that, hey, I mean, all of us care about, things being bad and justice and all that stuff. But the biggest one happens when it hits close to home.
It does.
Right. That's with anything. It's like when you see a clip in the media about war, if it shows like 1,000 people died, you might just kind of gloss over it. But when it shows a personal story of this one little girl who might have died in a war, then you pay attention.
And even it's more crazy than that. If you knew that one little girl then it really hits home.
Yes.
It's those little things. And also, again, because even if thousands die, right? If it is, it depends also the type of country, right? Sometimes value of life is also, I don't mean going totally out of whack here, but.
What world leader, was it Stalin when he said, yeah, numbers, one person dies, it's a tragedy, 1 million people die, it's a statistic? Who said that, guys? That's like crazy.
I forgot.
I don't remember, but it's a good one.
But it's such a valid point. And that's the same thing with security, cybersecurity in general, right? One person gets hacked, oh, well, or that company, oh, well. But until you realize, oh, wait a minute, that company got hacked and now everyone has your data and information. You might want to be a little bit more concerned about it. We're so connected in so many different ways. And yet, I don't know. I feel like the elders of the internet here is really referring back to is, we want our freedoms, we want our personal data, but we also need some kind of governance and, something to help us kind of protect us overall in a lot of different ways. I mean, who'd have thought IT crowd would give us like this level of like deep anything.
Well, that's what satire is. It's making fun of serious issues.
Yeah. The folks that actually think they know everything are the ones that will probably fail at some point in time.
Usually the folks who pretend they know everything actually know a little bit less. And they're trying to cover it up.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
Well, they don't know what they don't know.
Right. Or they're embarrassed of what they don't know. Well, what I'm seeing here is something that's interesting to me in the security field. Is you have several levels here. You have these business people, it seems, from what I'm looking at, watching this IT leader. So, which I'm kind of relating to like maybe CISOs and security folks, and then the dev people, like the engineers behind the IT guys here, like the engineers behind everything.
Okay, I don't know that. Maybe it is, but anything that is a buzz, right? The way I looked at this, the whole internet speech and all that stuff, when everything's a big buzzword,
yes.
Today it's this, tomorrow it's something else, right? Self-driving cars, this. It's always because people know very little, not enough about it until it becomes natural.
Yes.
Do all cybersecurity, like CISOs, like you?
It's got nothing. I don't know that it's only. I wouldn't even call this in only security. I would say every technologist or any scientist, right? In general, there's levels of knowledge, obviously, and like I said, I think we touched upon this earlier. It's your exposure to certain things, right? If you're exposed, and if you've been exposed to certain things, or you made mistakes, you will have learned much more than the person who never made those mistakes. Because they think that person who never made mistakes will think everything's gung-ho because they're doing things right. But until you've gone a slight deflection on the way, then now you've learned something that you might never forget. In fact, the best people who've been successful are the folks who made mistakes and missteps, along the way to make them stronger, richer people in general. So,
I do agree with that. I also, though, is purpose, right? Like if you are in a leadership position in technology, your focus shifts, right? Like you still have to have the practitioners, the one that actually have to run and touch the equipment, if you will, and the software, right? All the applications and manage all that. And then as you move up into the hierarchy of management, it's less about the tasks and it's more about the overall purpose of those tasks. Is it solving a business problem? Is this something that's going to help a company more profitable? Is this something that's going to secure your clients or your internal company data, et cetera? I mean, I'd imagine less at this point. Like, I'm not saying that you're not technical because heaven knows you got like 1,000 like certs. Okay. You're a rarity. But at some point, I think people of your caliber do move away.
Oh, you have
from being
to,
technical,
right? You have to do, you have to see whether it's fit for purpose. And that's where the messaging that Dan was speaking about, right? Earlier as well. And you're right on money, right? is to convey that message in such a way that it's not just the technical part of the thing, conveying it why it's good for the business or for whatever the use case is, right? And if you are not respectful of how of knowledge or communicating that way, you hash it up, and you might have the best thing in the world, but it'll never either sell or people won't embrace it as much. And I can get into history.
So I think that's what Syya was saying, is like the different level of focus here is like the people who build the technology are in love with their features. The people who are trying to market are in love with the words around the features, but they're missing the point of what security people they're worried about the business, what this means to their business and to what they have to say to the shareholders and the board. That's the word I was looking for.
I would actually, it's not. I would actually say leaders, right? Beyond security, because it is. If you say security or anything else, security folks look, whatever the leaders also look from a risk perspective,
right? While
other technologists in general might look at the availability of something and ease of use, as against, you should look at all, but security, you look in terms of what is the risk of using this or not using it, and the message will be as such. But from a business perspective, you still look in terms of business, how does it help? And then you weigh the benefits and the pros and cons.
Do you find when you go to work that the business people are sometimes like this, that they're so in love with something shiny and the latest technology and they don't understand what it is, but they want it anyway?
No, but yeah, that's true for in life, right? But the truth is, from a security perspective, you have to make a case for why. What is the risk and what's the risk appetite of using such? But that we have to do that individually as well, right? You say, oh, I'm using this. I'm driving a car. I'm going here. I can't drive, but I'm driving. So this is your risk. And you could meet in an accident. And now what's your risk appetite? You're okay, but meeting in an accident, not only you, but hitting someone else, right? And so on. But that's in general, that's the way how our whole world gets around.
Yeah. No, you gave me a visual of like, imagine if like our task is we need to go to the grocery store to pick up groceries, and you have the option of like walking there, riding a bike, or a pretty new shiny Lamborghini. And it's like sometimes that Lamborghini will get you there, but if you don't know how to drive a Lamborghini, guess what? You're probably not going to make it to the store. Yeah. Even though conceptually it should take you there, right? No, you kind of made me giggle on that because, from an IT in general or security, whatever have you, is this assumption being that technology will always be the best thing, and that it doesn't, like if it doesn't go well, does it result in anarchy? So, with this video here that with her speech, and she's appealing to these non-educated people, a very real fear of like, what if the internet does go down and everyone just like freaks out? Didn't we all think that was going to happen with Y2K?
Yeah, that's exactly true. But by the way, I wouldn't even use the term uneducated. It's unaware, right?
Unaware. Look at you being so nice. You are an executive, aren't you?
No, it's true, because what is education anyway? It's not just you get a piece of paper and you got. It's like how aware are you or not, right? Yeah. Of things in life or in general.
Or how much do you buy into the hysteria? I mean, I remember Y2K when everyone thought everything was going to be set over. There were people stockpiling in their homes the food, just like we were about to have an earthquake, because they really thought everything was going to be shut down, like grocery stores and like their offices. They thought they wouldn't be able to go to work. I was out there with a video camera just recording all of this hysteria, thinking, okay, well, if it does happen, I was kind of agnostic, like how people are like, I kind of believe it, but I kind of don't, but let's just capture this and see what happens.
Yeah, that's true. And that's Y2K was a good example of what happened, right? And there's going to be many more. It's always. Yeah. Now we've come to that cusp about electric cars and, that do so many things, and, each one's, one-upping the other, and other technology as well. I'm just saying in examples of, but you use all that information to do other things, but then these things can be misused as well. So in so many ways.
So what would happen if we didn't have that anymore? If all this technology just went away, what would happen?
Oh, so that's a big word. But like what I would say is, right, generally you have backups, right? So for example, today, they're so used to using GPS and going from one place to another. There was a time when we knew how we use maps. But if you knew how roads are built in general, you'll have an idea. There's north, south. Even the real north is not, it's slightly to the left of where, if you go by magnetic south. But let's say, but I don't know how many of you are aware in general, and that's true in the air as well. In general, odd numbers are north, south, and even numbers are east, west when you go on a highway.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I have noticed that. That's funny that you should mention that, at least in the US. Yeah. Is it global?
But even,
I don't know. I get lost all the time. I couldn't tell you.
No, but then it's not an exact science, right? Because, like, say, if you take a number 95, right? It goes north-south, but then you say, oh, there's a 495. It's sort of going, you think of it almost like a tributary of things. And similarly, like the roads in Europe, a lot of them were the Roman roads, for example, that are built over. And these things were actually built for the military, just so you know. So
roads were built for the military, or the numbering system?
Yeah, roads too. But we could get into a whole, because this is something I really love about cultures and how things work and all that stuff, and how armies were, oh God, they digress too much. So.
I was gonna say, did we just take you down a rabbit hole in your mind right there? Did you just?
Yeah, because like if you really look at it, and you don't have to put this in the.
No, I mean I like it. I
like it. No, keep going, man. Yeah.
If you look at it, right, these roads, for example, and back in the day, when we didn't have all these, flying stuff, planes and all that stuff. In some areas in cities, if you see, they were built very narrow, and there's a reason for that. Because however big your army was, they couldn't fit in at the same time side by side, juxtaposed. So what could happen is, even if you had a smaller army, you could still fight those 2 or 3 people that can fit in that gap, and you could win. And if you see some of these older cities and all that stuff in Europe and all that, you find these houses that were narrow streets, right?
Right.
Where even the women and I'm saying women, and it doesn't mean everyone fought, but generally it was the men, could throw hot water, for example, on soldiers as they came down and all. So these are we evolve in life and stuff like that. But I know we digress in this whole concept of what if we didn't have the technology. I'm just saying that people adapt and they do things in different ways.
Because they're innovating, right? What is that? Necessity is the food for innovation or whatever.
And it gets also very interesting because will we survive? I don't have an answer for that because we've become so dependent as well, right?
Right.
So it used to be, now it's Google, right? We Google something. Before you just had to read things, and you just read things, and you wrote notes and all that stuff. And now it's going to go even further with all this other artificial intelligence.
Right, and it's also kind of like getting into this, so like this concept of geek, because like in the past, like when knowledge wasn't readily accessible, you had to chase it. So then the people who knew a lot of things, you knew that they weren't outside playing, they weren't hanging out with their friends, they were sitting either in a dark room by themselves, or they were at the library. So, but now anyone can find the answer to anything all the time. So, like if you see a kid today, they seem like they know everything.
No, but you see, this concept goes down from the old days, from ancient times. The scribes with the big guns. because they were the people who read and wrote things, right?
Yeah.
And it goes down now here because even then we say, like when we assume, right? This knowledge we are getting into now this whole chat GPT and God and whatever, right? The concept is that you're dependent on all that data that's being curated and the senses there. It could be wrong. And what if the premise of the whole thing is wrong? You're getting information. Even things like writing. Writing is an art. Some of us write and some of us don't, right? And it comes, some write better, others don't. And we spoke about some communications. Machines can do a lot of the good things because they can correct things, right? So, but yeah, at the same time, you're getting information, which is, now you're starting at a different level. So there'll be an argument, hey, if you had to write a paper, for example, at university, right? It used to be that you started from scratch and you reached that rudimentary level because you're not a doctor as yet, right? You reach that level. But now the computers can take you to a whole other level and you improve upon that as against saying, oh, now it's become easier.
Right. Well, now, like you mentioned, Chat GPT, you can even write a draft of your article, and now teachers have to use a different AI tool to see if Chat GPT wrote your article or
no. I wouldn't even attack it that way. I would
no.
I think these are all opinions now, right? The question comes, hey, you can't stop that. You can guide, but the question comes, okay, somebody's used it. Then so what? Now that you've gathered so much, right? Tell me what more can you add to this? Maybe that's the path to go.
Right. So now, okay, you can't stop them from using it, but you need to test their knowledge to see if they used it to actually learn something, since this is for a course.
Because the level has gone to a different level now, right? It used to be you were coming only to that level 5, for example, but now that whole level 5 is written by artificial intelligence. So now how can you get to level 7? Tell me about, after you've got this, what can you tell me more about, that could be the test.
Okay, you're making me think, Les, you're making me think more, because I poo-poo Chat GPT, because I actually argued with someone else the other day, was the one thing that makes us humans is our ability to have the extraordinarily complex conversations that has emotions and a lot of nuances and subtleties. And so for me to hear and see what Chat GPT is capable of, I'm kind of like, why would you want to take away language? Like, that's the one thing that really helps us develop and form deep, complex relationships, articulate our emotions, etc. I don't know why we'd want to automate that and have a machine do it for us, right? But you're helping me see it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I hate it, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because you have to adapt, and there's nothing you can do about new things that come out, because once it's out of the rabbit hole, it's just there.
You're right.
So now, instead of fighting it, you use it and see what, because the bad guys are going to use the same thing anyway. So what the heck? You start using it and learn to live with it, and so on. There's so much in this whole concept of thinking. Accountability, the complexity of us as human beings will never be replaced. So even, for example, Diana or Syya, right? You've created this paper, you've done this, and you might use ChatGPT to create this whole episode or whatever. And you're talking, I'm just making this up, right? You'd say you use this, and then what?
You can, but you know what? The thing is with all of those tools, is it they do the best they can. You really have to work hard if you're going to use an AI tool for creativity. They can do a good job to make something look like passable so something that's kind of mediocre, okay. But once you want to get like emotion and you want to get a certain style, then you need human intervention.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, right? You need to make it to the next level of showing things, how things happen and adapt to it, so that now you're differentiating. Because even if I said, hey, don't do this and you don't do that, and you used an AI to help you to reach a certain level, if you publish it, you have that intelligence of publishing it, so you're accountable for it. That machine can't take that accountability. You can't say, oh, the machine did it, and therefore I believed it. That's
right. So in the case of a business, you need to have someone checking that. But in the case of, say, a teacher and a student, it might be time for an oral test.
I think that's what we're going to shift it towards. It's going to have to, I think, right? I think you have to do an oral interview.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to speculate on what they need to do. But the question is, all I'm saying is there be different ways of testing as well, which is taking that you've already making the assumption you've already used whatever has to be used, and going from there.
No, I think that we're going to go like down another rabbit hole here. God, I knew this, Les, because you are such a polymath. Like, I feel like we can go down so many different rabbit holes with you. And
who wants to listen to a boring old speech? Wouldn't it be better if I could actually bring one of these wonders in to show you it? Say, I don't know, the internet. I think it would. And I have. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you the internet. Oh, please, no flash photography. You'll harm the internet. Ladies and gentlemen.
Why is no one laughing?
If anything were to happen to this box, the world as we know it would fall into chaos. Planes would drop from the sky like tables. Society would tear itself apart like an angry child with a napkin. Man's primeval instinct to survive at any cost would lead to terrible violence. So please, no flash photography. And that's what the flashing light is for. Anyone?
Is it heavy?
Is it? That's a bit of a silly question. The internet doesn't weigh anything.
Fucking idiot.
Okay, guys, I guess I should wrap it up. No, I really have to finish up. Guys! Oh my God, you really like me.
This really isn't that funny.
I know, it's terrible. I thought at least we could get a good story out of it, something we'll remember.
Y2K.
Or blackouts. See, now they're getting the reaction they hoped for.
Les, thank you so much for your time. This was such a thoughtful conversation. Who'd have thunk, you guys? We would take a British sitcom and have some real deep conversations.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's all of you. Actually, we all share ideas. I don't know that I give any more or less than.
Oh, you absolutely did. You're a really deep thinker. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
We need more deep thinkers in our world, my friend. We do. And I just want to do one slight little thing here. I just realized, I don't know if you guys see this, but there's an EL on my little makeup here. Just so
I do see it. I do see it.
Just a little shout out there. But anyway, I just thought I would share that. So I think this is a great conversation. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us for Check Point ReelTalk.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Check Point ReelTalk. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button and some of those other buttons to show us your appreciation. And if you want to learn more or have any questions, please let us know in the comments. We'll see you next time for another episode of Check Point ReelTalk.